All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, oldest debates in all of tech, Android versus iOS. You've been in those arguments, I've been in those arguments. We all have a favorite we're ready to defend.
But what if we could just set aside the opinions for a minute? Forget brand loyalty, forget what all your friends have. What does the actual data say? Well, we're going to dig in and see what the numbers can tell us about this classic rivalry.
Because, let's be real, most of the time we're just arguing about feelings, right? It's about what we're used to, what interface we like, what ecosystem our stuff is already in. There's not a lot of hard evidence thrown around. That is until now. We actually dug up a scientific paper from 2020 that did a full-on usability study. It's a quantitative comparison between the two, using a survey to get feedback from real, everyday users. So no more guessing. So, who exactly did they talk to for this study? Let's quickly peek behind the curtain at the methodology so we know where all this juicy data is coming from. The whole thing was based on a pretty comprehensive survey of 60 smartphone users. Now, that's a solid number to get not just the broad strokes, but also some of the more detailed nitty-gritty feedback on their experiences. And check this out. They made sure to get a really balanced group of people. This wasn't just a room full of Apple fanatics or Android purists. 45% were Android users, 40% used iOS, and get this, a super interesting 15% actually used both systems. Now, that's a unique perspective. All right, the stage is set. Let's get to our first round, the big one, the user experience. How does it actually feel to use these phones day in and day out? And whoa, right out of the gate, this is fascinating. When people were asked which phone is just plain easier to use and which one has a more interactive and friendly UI, Android took a pretty decisive lead. So for that initial out-of-the-box simplicity, the people in this study gave the win to Android. So point one of round one definitely goes to Android for just being easy to pick up and go. But hold on, the plot thickens, because when the questions changed just a little bit to better user experience overall and which phone works smoothly, wow, the tables completely turned. iOS pulls way ahead here with a really strong lead. So what does this actually tell us? Well, it seems like Android might be easier to get started with, but users feel that iOS provides a more polished, more reliable experience in the long run. Maybe that's that tight hardware and software integration Apple is famous for. So, round one is a split decision. Okay, on to round two, and it's a big one, money. Let's talk about the price tag. This is always the elephant in the room, right? Let's see if the data confirms the stereotypes we all have in our heads. And, yep, this isn't even a close fight. It's a knockout. The people surveyed overwhelmingly see Android as the cost-effective choice. And on the flip side, iOS is strongly perceived as being a premium brand, suitable for the upper class. The data couldn't be any clearer on this one. So yeah, this confirms it's not just some marketing story. According to actual users, this perception is totally baked in. Android is the king of value, while iOS is firmly planted in that luxury, premium space. All right, time for our final round, power and performance. Let's pop the hood and see which operating system users think delivers more speed, more security, and just more oomph. So the researchers zeroed in on three things we all really care about, right? How long does the battery last? How snappy and responsive is the phone? And how secure do you feel your apps are? And, well, look at that. It's another clean sweep. In all three of these critical categories, battery life, speedy response, and app security, the users surveyed gave a pretty significant lead to iOS. So based on what these users are saying, there's really no debate here. When it comes to these core performance benchmarks, they feel that iOS just delivers a better, more solid experience. Okay, so after 3 rounds, after all of the data, what's the big takeaway? Let's put all the pieces together and see what this study really concluded at the end of the day. And you know what? This quote from the paper itself really just nails it. It's not about one being flat out better. It's about who each one is better for. The study basically says Android is fantastic for affordability and features, a great recommendation for most people. Meanwhile, iOS's premium performance makes it the go-to for the higher end of the market. So here is the final scorecard. Android gets the trophy for ease of use and, of course, a huge win on affordability. But iOS takes home the gold for smooth experience, overall performance, and security. You can really see two completely different profiles emerge. And I think that's the real lesson here. The idea that there's one single best phone out there is just a myth. What the data really shows us is a series of trade-offs. The real winner is whichever phone fits your priorities and what you value most, whether that's saving money or getting that super polished performance.
So I'll just leave you with this question to chew on. Looking at this breakdown, which of these profiles really speaks to you? Does your current phone match up with what these numbers suggest you might prefer? It's definitely some food for thought for the next time you're due for an upgrade. Thanks for diving into the data with me.